I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Rockingham County Planning Board for October 26, 2020. I would like to recognize our two alternates that will be serving tonight, and that's Corey Scott and Stacy Southern. If we could have the invocation, please, Mr. Harris.
Let us pray. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity that we can meet for our October 26th Rockingham County Planning Board meeting. Just be with us tonight as we review the cases being presented to us. Help us make decisions, be beneficial to the requesting parties and to the Rockingham County citizens. And also, Lord, just be with our chairman, Paul Sinowitz. Just help him to recover and be back with us soon. We ask these things in your precious name. Amen.
The next order of business is the approval of the minutes. Board members, you should have those in front of you. Please review, and if I can have a motion.
I'll motion to approve.
Do I have
Second.
all in favor? Any opposed? Minutes approved. I'd like to now review the procedures for public hearings conducted by the Rockingham County Planning Board and Board of Adjustment. The guidelines for speakers. Any and all persons who would like to speak regarding any case being heard by the Planning Board must sign the case file roster prior to the beginning of the meeting. For quasi-judicial hearings, any and all persons who would like to speak regarding any variance or special use permit case being heard by the Planning Board must be sworn in by the presiding board member prior to the case hearings. Additionally, any speaker must be recognized by the presiding board member prior to speaking. When recognized, each speaker must approach the podium, state their name and address before speaking. Unless otherwise specified, all testimony, evidence, and comments should be directed to the board chairperson or presiding board member. Please remember that it is expected that many will wish to speak about this case. Once speakers begin, if you agree with an argument already presented in favor or against, please practice the courtesy of indicating that with a show of hands or a short statement of support rather than presenting the same argument again. Groups are also encouraged to send a representative to speak on their behalf. This will allow more citizens the opportunity to be heard. Case hearing guidelines. Each case will be presented to the board by a member of the planning staff. Following the staff presentation, the case applicant will be given the opportunity to brief the board regarding the case. Following the applicant's presentation, those who have signed up to do so will be granted the opportunity to speak against or in support of the proposal. If needed, the board chairperson reserves the right to set time limits for each speaker. After hearing from the public, the applicant will be given an opportunity for rebuttal. This will be followed by board discussion, motions, and voting procedures. May we hear the first case for the night, special use permit case number 2020-28, Wells.
Good evening. Special use permit 2020-28 is a request to allow a travel trailer park on a property in the RA zoning district. The special use permit request and conditions include a site plan and a limitation of 5 sites for the property. The total property acreage is about 15 acres. Located near the Virginia line outside Stoneville on 650 Anglin Mill Road. This shows the property's location in proximity to the land use plan. In relation to surrounding zoning, the parcels that are colored or just white are residential agricultural. And here is an aerial view of the property. And the plan that shows is a little bit difficult for the audience to see, but the area to be developed for RV sites is a relatively small area right here. While this property owner was obligated to request this zoning district and this special use permit because they are occupying an RV is not a legal occupancy, and the 5 RVs that they want to place on their property couldn't be there without going through this process. They'll also have to go through the environmental health process for adequate septic system as for RVs, and they'll have to follow all of the standards as if it were a full RV park, although it's important to note that it is not intended for an RV park, and the conditions limiting the RVs to 5 could only be increased if they were to come back before this board. Are there questions for me? That I'm assuming the applicant is here. You may have questions for them. Philip.
Mine's, I think, mainly for you. I know that the parcel itself is showing 14.92 acres.
Mm-hmm.
It appears that this is a portion of that parcel.
They've included the entirety of the parcel as recreation area in relation to the RVs, but the site plan is very specific, and you'll be making a decision on this tonight based on that specific site plan. Any changes to the site plan would have to come back before this board. Anything larger than that small imprint of RVs.
So on the graph paper, is that a site plan?
The graph paper, yes, is also, that shows the specific location of the RVs within that block, within that area.
Is the house on that chart, the house that's currently located on that property?
Yeah.
It is on this chart, just below where you see the, oh, you don't have a packet, sorry, Corey.
Yeah, I do. It's on the line.
Oh, okay. Okay, good.
I'm looking at a screen.
It's a small screen.
But are you saying that the green, the part that's kind of the greenway is not showing on the site plan then? That's not a part?
That's correct. The application includes that 15 acres, but the only part that will be developed is shown on the site plan.
Okay.
That's the difference. While the property will be zoned that way, the only developed area can be what's on the site plan.
Carrie, how many acres is this specific site plan?
The site plan itself is maybe an acre or 2. A property owner is here to answer that question more specifically. The condition, the main meat of the condition is 5 trailers together in centrally located near one another.
You said it's not going to be used as an RV park?
That's correct.
Are we allowed to ask them the purposes?
Absolutely. You can ask the applicant what the purpose is, always through the lens of the standards of a travel trailer park, and understanding that the only use we have to call it is travel trailer park. It's the 5 units that are differentiating it from a typical park.
Pardon me for not reading more on this or doing more investigation. What are the parameters in the UDO for parcel sizes?
It should be in your packet.
I missed that.
Maybe the
Oh, got it.
travel trailer parks or recreational non-permanent vehicles,
Yeah.
including tenting or other forms of weather-protected covered camping. They're mostly separation distances. Roadways have to be 4-inch gravel. No roadway parking, excuse me. A parking spot for each RV. A natural foliage green belt along the street side of the property and interior lines. And any signs that would be proposed for the property would have to be permitted separately. And I would suggest, if you read the sign regulation on that second page,
Yeah.
that you consider perhaps stricter conditions even than that.
Are there any more questions for Carrie?
I guess, Carrie, just to verify, our current land use plan, this is in the rural category.
Correct.
Which
Yeah.
typically is very low to low density, 1 unit per 2 acres, is that correct?
That's correct. Yep. I'll go through the growth management strategies and policies of your land use plan. Those that are relevant have to do with preserving agricultural and open space, because this property owner wishes to utilize this property for this use rather than another potential use such as a subdivision in the RA. And housing opportunities that meet a wide range of affordability. While these aren't permanent homes, they are methods of housing people temporarily, as allowed by an RV situation. The policies that are supportive are residential development, open space and recreation, and affordable housing.
And so to clarify, RV, that's not a single wide.
It is not.
Right, it's-
It is not a manufactured home that they're
It would have to
proposing.
be a recreational vehicle, a travel trailer or something. to
That's
that
right.
effect.
That's it.
Going to just disinfect the screen between speakers.
Thank
It's
you.
really difficult not to lean on this. This thing's going to be really clean.
Thank you, Carrie. Billy Watkins. Okay.
Would you be so kind as to call an applicant, if there is an applicant, to come?
Oh, I'm sorry, is the applicant here? And that would be William Wells?
It is. I'm his wife, Lisa Wells, and I'm
Okay.
going to speak on our behalf.
Okay. Lisa, would you state your name and your address, please?
Oh, I forgot. I'm sorry. My name is Lisa Wells. My address is 650 Anglin Mill Road, Stoneville, North Carolina, 27048.
And if you will, place your right hand on the Bible. Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Okay, Ms. Wells, would you give us some more information about your
Sure.
application, please?
The purpose of our special use permit is to allow our children, we have 2 adult children who are married, and they would like to have some affordable housing while they pay off some college loans and save up for their own permanent housing situation. And so this seems like a good use of our land to allow them to live. on our property to get those financial feet underneath them. So we have, in order to get all these, the electricity that we would need, we started researching all the permits, and then we found that we had to apply for this special use permit. So that's the purpose of us coming before you today. We've done quite a bit of research as to what it is that we need to do, and talked with all of the people about water and the water situation and what we have to do with that, and with the septic permit that we have to get. We've done all that research, and we're just waiting to put in that permit until we have the board's approval for our special use permit.
Are there any questions from board members?
How many trailers are you planning to put on site?
Well, because we didn't want to have to come before the board again, we have 5 sites listed on the site plan, but we only have intentions to build 2 sites, 2 RV sites at this time. When we apply for the permit, the septic permit, we do intend to go with a larger septic tank, so that if we in the future decide that we if we have future need for another site, that we can go ahead and add on a site. But at this time, we only have intention to build 2 sites to begin with.
Would this be to the right of your current driveway that you're utilizing?
Correct.
To the
It would
site?
be to the right of our current driveway. Mostly, and it would be quite a bit down the lane, so the RV sites would barely be visible from the road. Also, as this is family that we plan on housing in these RV sites, we have no intentions at this time to put a sign advertising. We do not wish to rent to the general public.
Would that be something that you would consider in the future, once your children have their feet under them?
Possibly, but I mean, I have no way of knowing.
Right.
No way of knowing right now. These are just the rules that are before us.
I just want to ask Carrie, on the
Yes.
special use permit, is it any number of sites that are required for this type of permit?
Just a 5-acre property is a minimum size,
What with,
but not with you mean the where the RV sites
Well,
themselves are?
the drawing is showing 5 sites, and she's basically indicating only 2 to be used.
Mm-hmm. There isn't a requirement for a specific number in the ordinance.
Okay.
It would become part of this properties ordinance once you establish that condition. Part
So
of the properties
even
zoning.
if she only plans to do 2 right now, she'll be not grandfathered, but she'll be permitted to build up to 5, right?
That's
At her
correct.
discretion.
Yep,
Okay.
that's correct. And those are some of the conditions for you to consider, being open to the, well, I don't know. It's actually a question for the attorney, whether they can condition the site not to be open to the general public or not. So while you think about that for a minute, the other thing I want to make sure that the applicant understands is that, and I'm sure that we explained, these aren't residences. RVs are not to be used as residences, even. I mean, they're intended to be on a very short-term basis, and I think we talked about that before, because we have a use called a guest house that is allowed for a longer-term residential stay, but these are not for someone to. They're not for long-term living, even for. They're supposed to be rented by the day.
Yes.
Okay, that's the intent of this.
Can I extend that question? So Why did you decide to do it as an RV park and have travel trailers or something brought in versus alternative structures that you could put in place?
The guest house the guest house provision is we're only allowed to have one guest house per lot of land, and we have no desire to partition off, and make separate lots of our property. And so that is why we just are asking for the travel trailer park.
I don't know how important this is, but do you know, I mean, I'm just looking at the aerial from the widest point where it flares off, do you know roughly the width from one side to the other at the largest flare out? Because it looks like that would be where the...
Can you reference to me based on are you talking about like where the horizontal line hits our driveway?
Yeah, the forest, it's up here.
Are you talking about the widest part of the property?
The widest, yeah.
Perhaps.
Mhm.
So you want to know the widest part?
Yeah, do you roughly know what that is? I'm just looking, there's like a lot that's going to have to fit in on the left-hand side of that driveway from where I can see
You mean
it
on
is.
the right-hand side, where the travel trailers are going?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. I'm looking at
Okay,
the
so
site.
as you look at it on the left-hand side, I know that,
Looking at this, I think you've got a 25-foot setback from...
it's a 25-foot
Property
setback.
line.
If we look, I know that it's at least 100 feet, 125 feet perhaps. We've got on the right-hand side of the property where we have it measured off based on our neighbors that had a surveyor come out, to the driveway, we have 95 to 100 feet to the driveway. And so then it goes on to the other side. So it's got to be actually closer to 200 feet, sir.
So on your drawing, on the graph paper, if I'm doing my addition correctly, you've got 100 feet and then the driveway.
Yes, that is
So is
correct.
is that 100 feet to the property line, from
No.
the property line to the driveway?
From the property line to the driveway, yes.
It's 100 feet, and then
Yes, there's
the
20
width of the driveway, which you
And-
don't have, but that's okay.
The width of the driveway has to be 20 feet. We have it marked as a two-way. We have
Okay.
to widen the existing driveway because we only have about 16 feet, 12 to 16 feet in some spots. So we do have to widen it in a few places in order to accommodate the two-way driving that the permit requires.
So you're estimating somewhere around 120 feet total at the widest point.
Let's see if I
It's
can...
probably closer to 200 feet.
Okay.
I'm going to... Okay.
But the driveway's probably a third from the aerial view. It's probably 1/3 of that from the left line to the driveway. I'm not sure how relevant that is for us to discuss, but it's a little tight over there.
The distance from the driveway to the property line is another, looks like the way the sketch is, that the driveway is right in the center.
It's
the road
approximately in the
frontage.
center, yes.
So there was,
My husband was just reminding me that the reason that we're putting everything on the right side of the left side, as you're looking at the picture on the screen, is that our existing well is on the other side of the screen, and when we put in the septic system, it has to be the septic tank has to be 100 feet from the well, so as to not contaminate our water source.
They got now to 50, but that's probably irrelevant. I know.
Well,
back
50
it
to
was-
100.
it
They,
was, yeah.
100 was preferable,
It was.
is what the
Correct.
wording said. 50 was acceptable, but 100 was preferable.
there are several vehicles that are on the property, are you planning to move those
Yes,
vehicles? And-
yes, as soon as possible. They're just vehicles that have been junked that the price of metal had gone down and we hadn't yet taken them off the property. But we do have, we are a large family, and so we do have several vehicles.
Yeah, I noticed.
I only brought a portion of us, just the ones involved.
So I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Do you have any?
Go ahead.
The purpose of this is for 2 adult children. Is that 2 sets of adult children?
So I have a son and his wife, and a daughter and her husband.
Okay, so it's 2 sets of adult children.
Correct.
Will be living in these RVs to pay off student loans and get on financial footing. That's
Correct.
okay.
You know, it's important that they can't be living there. They're staying there on a very temporary basis.
That's where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
So what, can you give some kind of
These are
time frame?
Mobile, the other option would have been manufactured homes or something, of that
Yes,
nature.
the manufactured homes required us to partition off the land, the
Parcels,
property,
yeah.
and have separate septic systems and so on and so forth.
And so they've chosen this option as adequate to meet their needs. We'll have to come and make sure that they're not being lived in, that they're just staying.
Well, the travel trailers are not, going to be on permanent foundations or
Right.
what have you.
Carrie, can you clarify for us what it means to live in a dwelling?
It's they're going to have an arrangement with the parents that they're basically renting these spaces on a daily basis. A code enforcement officer would go out there and see that there's permanent hookups with electricity and septic indicating longer-term occupancy. There are indicators of long-term occupancy that we would look for. And you have to remember, an RV park might have somebody staying for a day at a time, a week at a time, maybe even a month at a time.
Mm-hmm.
But the signs of permanency are not there. The type of electric hookup, the type of septic hookup. I'm not going to pull Ben on the stage, but it would be an enforcement issue to sort of watch and be sure.
So what you're clarifying is that if they have something more than the septic or the bathroom line coming out of the travel trailer into a septic receptacle, they had a wire coming out for the electrical and hooked up to a water hose, that's a typical RV hookup.
It's right.
And if that goes on for months,
Yeah.
I mean, you can go on for months with that
That's right.
setup. How would you determine the whether that's permanency or, long-term or?
If the
versus
trailers are never empty, it's definitely a more permanent situation. I understand it's an unusual ask, and we talked quite a bit about it and made sure that they understood the implications. The reason I brought it up is because I wanted to make sure when you talked about staying there while they pay off their student loans. I mean, RVs are typically for someone while they're building their house or while they need to be living in some other dwelling. And this is just a temporary, very short term.
Yeah, and I'm trying to wrap my head around what exactly defines short term. I mean, for some kids who are paying off their student loans, 20 years is short term.
No, that is not short term. That is not my definition of short term, and neither is it their intentions to stay there that long. I mean, what we are describing about the septic hookup, that is a normal RV hookup at a normal RV site. And so that makes it very difficult. You know, the language in the permitting process, it does say that it's for short term is not defined, and so that does make it a little.
I'll be honest, when I read this, I had something in mind for this piece of property that this is not what you're describing. You know, we've heard cases before of RV parks that were intended for commerce, and that it made all the sense. This one this is quite frankly throwing me for a loop a little bit, because I just didn't. This was unexpected. And as Carrie said, this is a little unusual. So
it's a matter of a property owner having the right to ask. To ask the question, and for you to decide whether it would meet the standards and the intent of an RV park.
Yeah.
If she were to build all 5 RV spots and occasionally rent it out, some of those spots, would that make it less of a challenge versus?
Frankly, yes, because of the nature of this use.
And I thought that's what this was, because it's so close to the river.
Yeah.
In a situation like this, too, it's short term, isn't it?
Yes.
And you know, you were talking about, I believe you said you had 2 children that's going to live there. Are they going to have, if they're going to live that temporary, will they be assigned a mailing address?
That would be preferable, so that they can.
Well, it seemed like if they designed a
They
mailing
would
address,
not be
that'd
given a
become
mailing
permanent.
address. That would totally
Yeah.
Okay.
fly in the face of the idea of the temporary. I mean, it's a
Okay.
this is a vacation type use and intent. So it wouldn't be appropriate for them to get addresses.
Would
That
it
would
be
really
appropriate?
indicate long-term.
Would it be appropriate to give the RV park its own address, so that it was not connected with our main living residence?
Perhaps I would want to talk about that more.
But wouldn't they have to parcel off the current address from the
Not
park?
necessarily. We can do more than one address on a parcel, but I don't know. It is. I mean, obviously, I have to be concerned about that because of the first question.
Carrie, I get the sense here, and we've done this before, I get the sense that there needs to be a little more work and guidance on this. And that's just my opinion. But it just seems like to me that it's not fitting neatly where it should.
Well, my suggestion is that you continue to hear testimony from
Okay.
and then you can hear concerns
Right.
from people that are nearby.
Okay.
And the main concern that I have with the living is actually more about the building code
Okay.
than it is about the zoning and use. It's living for a long time in an RV. And we
Right.
say no to people all the time that want to live in an RV.
And that's where I'm coming from. Okay, so does anybody have any other question?
I'm just going to ask you,
Yeah.
showing this well, is that well adequate to, I guess, supply your house in 2 sites?
Yes, according to the well people the water people that we talked to from out of Winston-Salem.
I will say they've been very careful to make sure that the environmental health aspect, water and septic and wastewater, are taken care of. They've been very forthcoming and careful and appropriate about that.
And also, I was concerned too, you're showing playground that's on the drain field of the septic system. Is that a health issue?
It's just on the very edge, and it's not been an issue. I don't
Is
know.
it-
Not yet.
I'm sure that environmental health would have been out there to connect, or will have to go out there to approve a
Yes.
connection. So they'll make sure it's appropriate at that time.
Carrie, I don't know whether this applies to it, but I was looking at this Chapter 1, Article 2 of the UDO. Any building or portion thereof which is designed for living and/or sleeping purposes. The term residence shall not be deemed to include tourist homes, other buildings designed for transient residence.
That's right.
Neither shall it include travel trailers, campers, motorhomes, other vehicles designed for transient residence.
So, the main reason for that definition is building code requirements and those things that go with it. There's zoning reasons for that definition as well, but in this case, it's more about.
Okay, I guess I haven't seen it.
Also the idea of having multiple dwellings on one lot, because, each dwelling, as far as a dwelling, needs to have its own lot.
Carrie, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
As far as renting the space on a daily basis, we have some RV parks in the county that do like a monthly, like you were talking about. Is that something that would be an option if the parents were to create a contract with the girl children?
I don't see why not.
Okay, so as long as it's a month-by-month basis, then that would cover the rental portion of it instead of living there?
Again, that could cover that part of it, but it wouldn't be a guarantee. And I don't mean to be, I guess I'm only harping on this because of the conversations that I had that I participated in didn't seem like living that you were describing.
One more question.
Go ahead.
The sites that you will be using, is that sites 1 and 2?
Correct.
Okay, now, sites 3, 4, and 5, would it be plumbed for electric, sewage, in case somebody came to locate an RV there? Would it be maintained?
That is kind of the plan, to go ahead and get the sewage and everything hooked up at the sewage and water hooked up at the same time, so that if we ever wanted to use those sites, that we would be prepared to handle their sewage.
Is
because we
that
don't.
definite?
The sites 3 through 5?
Yeah.
If it needs to be.
Well, you think about, you got it marked off there, and if it's accessible, and you had somebody wanted to camp at 3, 4, and 5, could they move right in and have all the necessities they need to?
That is the plan. That.
That's all.
Okay. And we may ask you to come back.
Sure.
If we have other questions, but thank you very much. Mr. Watkins, did you decline to speak, or do you want to speak? Okay. Thank you. Curtis Redd.
Okay, once we agree with all that's going on, I think we're satisfied with what
Okay,
we
so you declined to speak.
did.
Okay. Bill Wells, you are the other applicant? Okay. And you don't wish to speak.
I actually have a question for you.
Yeah.
Can you just address the board? I think he has one of those.
Okay. If Mr. Watkins, if you will come up and be sworn, please. And if you'll put your right hand on my Bible and raise your left, please. Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Can you please approach the podium and state your name and address, please?
Certainly. Let me just
Yeah.
help you out.
Disinfect.
Thank you.
There we go.
Okay, Mr. Watkins, what would you like to say or ask?
My name is Billy Watkins. My question would be, not that I'm, where is the, do they have a waste for certain, like, a length of time or way to, what are they going to do with the waste or whatever? That's mainly my question.
And by waste, do you mean sewage and
Yeah.
or you're not worried about solid waste?
Beg your pardon?
You're not worried about solid waste. You're not worried about garbage. It's the sewage that you're concerned about.
Yeah, well, all the waste, anything that
Okay.
would, what I hear that, I have land adjoining this,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the only thing that I have.
Okay. And is that your only question, or?
That's my main question, where the waste going to be. Will it be leaking off on other property or whatever?
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Carrie, would it be okay, I've got Mr. Watkins' question. Can I go ahead with the other witnesses and then have Ms. Wells answer his question, or do we need to bring her?
Yeah, that's best to go ahead and.
Go ahead, okay.
Have other witnesses
Right.
first.
Ms. Wells, would you please come back up and answer this question?
Oh, wait, that's just the opposite of what I was suggesting.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Other witnesses first, then you can sort of have a chance for
totally
rebuttal.
missed that.
It's all right.
Got lost in translation.
Yeah.
Okay. Caleb Wells? I'm good. Okay, no questions. Taylor Wells? I'm good. Okay. Dan Cunningham? You're good? Abigail Cunningham?
I suppose I can.
Absolutely, if you've got a question. If you would,
Did they say you needed us to testify?
if you have something that you would like to add.
I can have some.
Okay, if you will, place your right hand on the Bible. Right hand. Raise your left hand. Okay, there we go. You have that right. Okay. Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay, if you will step to the podium and state your name and address, please.
My name is Abigail Wells. I just got married, but I haven't legally changed my name yet. So
Okay.
it's still Wells. I live at 650 England Mill Road, Stoneville, North Carolina, 27048.
Okay.
And the only thing that I think that I would like to add is I hear a lot of people saying things about rental and like the rental agreement. And we have talked a little bit about, my parents and I have talked about like what the rental agreement would be. And we have actually discussed that.
Does anybody have any questions for Mrs. Wells Cunningham? I do.
Sure.
So you're going to be one of the folks living in one of these RVs, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So maybe you can help define what to you is short term.
Well, I just graduated nursing school as a nurse, and so I have a lot of student loans, and it's very difficult to find a reasonable price rental agreement, and so the RV seems like a very good option because my cousins own an RV and they said that they would be willing to rent it out to us to be able to use, and we don't intend to live in it for more than just 1 to 2 years. But of course we would be paying rent daily if necessary, but monthly. But if something were to happen that could come up, like another house became available for us to rent, we don't need to stay there for that long. We're not committed to stay there for 1 to 2 years. It's just that's maybe how long we think that it might take for us to be able to pay down some of the loans and be able to find a reasonable priced rental home and to build our credit to be able to buy a house.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions? I don't. Thank you very much. Ms. Wells, as the applicant, do you have any other, any rebuttal or anything else that you would like to address to the board?
I just want to make sure that Mr. Rick Edelman has any laws.
Yes, please. That's right. You need to answer this question. Yes, please.
We have plans to apply for a septic system for the waste and for the sewage, so that we just waited to put in that application until we got approval or disapproval, until we found out about the special use permit, because the applications are non-refundable, and so we're trying to be as smart as we can with our resources. So, and as far as solid waste, we have garbage pickup from Waste Management that comes by our road once a week. So solid waste would be held through, or would be carried away by Waste Management.
Does anybody have any other questions for Ms. Wells?
I had one.
Go right ahead, Mr. Asher.
You had mentioned about the septic system for this park. Would that be an additional septic system?
Correct. Our septic system is only set up for our 4-bedroom house, and so we would have to have an additional tank for 5 RV sites. We have to have a 2,000 gallon septic tank and an appropriate leach field. So, and that is the maximum. 5 sites is the maximum that a 2,000 gallon septic tank could accommodate.
So you wouldn't have any idea where this would be placed, would you?
There was some slight confusion about that. We have talked back and forth with the sewage person, Jacob Williamson, and so we have to have him come out and approve the site. We have to accommodate a plan, but we have not yet looked at all the different elevations in order to get that site plan appropriately made to see what they would be looking at. It has to be able to drain downhill and whatnot, and I'm not exactly sure how many feet for the leach field we'll have to accommodate. So that's why that is not on that site plan, because I do not yet know all those regulations.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no other questions, thank you, Ms. Wells. I will entertain discussion from the board.
I just have a...
And/or staff.
Based on the way our ordinance is defined, the way the building code is set up, et cetera, we currently don't allow the type of living that it sounds like they're describing, actually, in RV. Is it if the intent of the board is for us to look into our ordinances to see if there's something that we could create that would allow, say, 1 or 2 RVs on a property? I think, and to me, it seems like, and for longer term living, maybe that's an investigation to see whether that's legal, permissible. Go ahead.
Well, I get this question a lot. I call down in the county quite a bit, where somebody wants to build a home but wants to pull their RV down there and drill a well, put a septic, and I've always had to tell them that was not allowed within the county. so they couldn't move forward on that. And so that is a conversation.
Yeah,
That
I
has
mean,
always been my difficulty with passing along, that we couldn't allow that.
exactly. I don't know if we'd talked about that before or not, is instead of having to say no too many times, is there a standard that we could create for, yeah. So we send people to an RV park when they're just building their home and want to, so, but I mean, we could look at something like that.
Yeah, I'm thinking that location of this parcel, and not to give any kind of suggestions or guide anything in that direction, I'm having a tough time with its intended use now.
Based
However,
on the requirements of this particular.
yeah. However, I have seen what the things that we have approved, RV parks that we have approved, that would probably be ideal on this very parcel of land.
Exactly.
And I'm wondering if they would be better off to meet their goal, their even stated goal, by doing something a little different with more guidance.
Well, I mean, the only thing we can, this was the only tool that was anywhere near what could be done. We would have to create a new use, basically, create a new alternative, a new option, and it would have to apply throughout the county, obviously. So that will, I'm sure that will be part of your consideration when you're looking at, if I bring a text amendment in front of you, for instance, what would you want to see for that? You would still want to see time limits, I would imagine.
Yeah, time limits, but
Would environmental health, would Jake require them to have a new septic system with a 2,000 gallon and a 5-bedroom leach field, probably for the site, and then still meet setbacks? I mean, is that something they probably have to do as a new septic tank?
I can't say if their current tank has the capacity. Jake will ensure, or any environmental health specialist will ensure that there's adequate capacity to handle the wastewater of however many sites might be housing 2 persons. A trailer is the standard.
I know this isn't my call, but I'm analyzing the aerial map and where it's going to go on that right side of the driveway, and I'm thinking parking spots, RV site, and then septic field in the back. I'm struggling, because I see these quite a bit, so I'm struggling to see if there's room to even do it on that side.
Well, the other problem is that the property from where the road is, if you're driving toward the house, the property to the left, I think where the well is fairly level, but the property to the right of the road drops off quite a bit down. So when I was looking at that, I thought, I got a 34-foot RV. I'm not sure where I would park it on that property without some significant grading and stuff like that in that property.
And what you're saying would actually be answered with perhaps a better scaled site plan.
Yeah.
I mean, the property owner would.
It's not.
If we're just talking about.
It's not germane to the special use
Correct.
permit.
If we're talking about location, the
Yeah.
property owner would have the opportunity to show.
Yeah.
And I can agree with the daughter. There is no rentals in this county. There's a lack of property for people to rent. So I really do feel for that case.
Well, I had adult children, husband and wife, my son and his wife lived with us. We had a 4-bedroom house. They lived with us in one of the bedrooms, and we considered converting one of our sunrooms that we had on the back of the house to another living space for another adult children. That we didn't have to do that one, but is there? I don't know if there are other options like additions to the house or something like that could accommodate it.
I just want to mention, I always thought travel trailers was short-term compared to the request today. So I remember, I think code enforcement might have got involved with it a few years ago, where somebody had a camp and set on property during hunting season, and it was denied. So it just seems like the length of time to live there and the number of units there was.
It's a combination of more than one household living on a property and the code, the building code that would declare that type of recreational vehicle not habitable for longer term.
Okay, we have a couple of questions as well. Was there any cause in support or against?
Emily, you can answer that. I think you got several calls asking about it. You don't have to, I don't know if you have to get it. Okay. Here.
We did get several calls for this case, and it seemed the concerns were about it being a travel trailer park, but once we described the scope of the number of spaces, people's concerns diminished. So they did not feel the need to come here. We did have one person that wanted to submit a comment but was not able to get it in time. But he didn't actually tell me if it was going to be for it or against it. But I did describe the scope to him. So.
Well, the other comment that I would make is we actually heard a case fairly recently with the lady who was doing the Airbnb, and we had a few similar questions with that as well. But I'm sitting here thinking, I'm listening to all the questions, and I'm thinking, if they weren't forthcoming in the fact that their kids live there, and we're just going to put 5 additional sites there, would we be quite as concerned about it?
This would have been a very different conversation.
Yeah, so I think the fact that they were forthcoming about that
This is true.
is something to consider because, whether their kids stay on the site or not, if somebody else came in and kept it rented out consistently, what would really be the difference? And then the fact, I think somebody brought up too, that how crowded it is. They're only applying for 5 sites. If they get into the site selection and the site surveys and everything else, and they realize they have to cut that back, that's possible as well, right? Instead of having 5 sites, they'd have significant less, the 2 they need.
Well, and this is why this is where my head is. If she had said, we're going to put 5 RVs here so that kayakers can come rent this thing out for the weekend or a month, or, I would have said, okay. Well, I mean, that makes sense to me because we've seen those kinds of things before. The fact that sometimes honesty.
Well, I mean,
Well,
we talked about short term,
But I think it's this future plan that I can understand they need this now, but what is it going to look like in the future? Because we're giving them this permit, and as soon as we give it to them, it's there.
and I think we have precedent already set for that, at least in my opinion. But I agree with Philip. I think there needs to be something that the county may want to look at to maybe with a text amendment or just come up with something that would allow folks to say if they're building the example he used on that site, that they could put a travel trailer up temporarily until the house is completed, because that obviously is going to bring more folks to our county, which is our whole goal anyway. So,
It definitely brings up the this gap between, and we have gotten lots of requests, as Philip will say, this gap in what we can allow as far as recreational vehicles. And I have to apologize if I didn't hear right and let us get to this point without being more forthcoming myself about what would be allowed, or in staff. So that's just that. I just want to make sure that I didn't create a misunderstanding.
Carrie, I'm not sure whether, and I'm just offering an opinion, and how dangerous that is. I'm not sure whether it wouldn't be better off for us to table this and let them plan better and then come back again. That's my sense, that if they had some better advice on the usage, they might could accomplish what they want to accomplish without being in violation. Because I think this having your kids live in a trailer for 1 to 2 years is not what the ordinance intends.
What
My
would
sense
you
that is.
expect to be additional evidence that you might receive to make a decision at that time instead of at this time?
Future plans, maybe?
Or are those, is it, so I don't know that it's something that could be tied to this particular special use.
And as, yeah, help me out with that. Would that help in this
Future-
instance?
Like future use? Are
Yes.
you thinking?
Like if they were going to do Airbnb, if they were going to do, if we had a little more clarification on what the rental agreement, is that even relevant?
I'm looking to John too for help. I mean,
I think ultimately what's been presented to the board is, in a quasi-judicial setting, is evidence. Now, the board can weigh what's been presented and make a determination as to whether or not the standards are met. Now, ultimately, it's the board's call.
the standards would need to be met now and later. I mean, we can't.
Right, and so at some point, this being a quasi-judicial hearing, and the board's going to have to weigh all that evidence and make a decision. Now, if they, correct me, and Carrie may have procedurally a better grasp on coming back and applying again for something different or something that would be allowed.
Perhaps something different, which would be fine, but the same, to keep the case open, there would have to be a relevant reason for you to
Okay.
need additional.
So we really
Evidence.
don't have it sounds like to me that it's not the best option to punt this.
I mean,
Or
it
to
is
table.
up to you, because I think it is what it is
Okay.
tonight, and you're looking, if you look at the standards for a travel trailer park, there is, Emily pointed out, a definition for recreational vehicles within the floodplain ordinance that says 6 months. But that's not a definition. We don't have a definition for RV or what a time period means.
Carrie, how does this affect, this decision affect future similar circumstances that might then come up exactly like this in many different areas? The
Right.
decision voted here today kind of
I guess what you're deciding today, if the special use permit were approved, and they are going to do what they say they're going to do, it could be problematic for other cases, for other situations.
So that we would be setting a precedent here.
Yeah, and the main thing is with these cases is that you have to treat all cases similarly. Can't say that word. I mean,
Right.
treat them the same.
Yeah.
You need to weigh and apply the rules consistently. Yes.
Right.
What if we put stipulation that says that like every 6 months they have to vacate the trailers for a period of time?
I'd actually rather, with the manufactured home park, their concern was separate lots. That'd be actually something that I could work with more, because a manufactured home is built for more permanent living. I mean, I don't know if we looked at that, because of the ask was for recreational vehicles.
It's a dilemma.
I'm ready to offer a motion.
Okay.
Couldn't drive.
I'd like to make a motion. After considering Rockingham County adopted comprehensive plans in UDO, the planning board recommends approval of case number 2020-28. This action is consistent with the adopted Rockingham County land use plan. After review of competent material and substantial evidence in the record, the board makes the following findings for 4 conclusions necessary to approve a special use permit. That the use or development is located, designed, and proposed to be operated so as to maintain or promote the public health, safety, and general welfare. That the use or development complies with all regulated or required regulations and standards of this ordinance and with all other applicable regulations. That the use or development is located, designed, and proposed to be operated so as to maintain or enhance the value of contiguous property, or that the use or development is a public necessity, and that the use or development conforms with the general plans for the land use and development of Rockingham County as embodied in this chapter in the Rockingham County UDO.
Is there a second? There being no second, the motion is denied or not approved.
Now, the motion doesn't carry.
The motion doesn't carry.
You asked for an alternate motion. Yeah.
Carrie, can I ask a quick follow-up question?
Sure.
Could we look at the text? What's the process of looking at the text for the county? Is this something that currently in our new UDO plan that's being rolled out, is that something that can be
It is,
talked
I've been
about?
researching, asking other municipalities for examples of what they've done. Yeah.
Because I think my biggest problem is I understand 100% what's going on in the family and the rental situation, but I think that by looking here, then we've opened up Pandora's box, and I can see exactly what's going to happen across the county because I'm in that line of work, and so I know exactly what's going to happen. And so if there's no text or anything that really dictates how this works, I think
Yeah, I mean,
we
that's
could.
what we were talking about, looking for another.
I think we could.
Thank
really
you. We
run
were,
it.
that's what I was talking about, looking for an alternative ordinance, an alternative set of standards, potentially.
Well, one of your recommendations was to table this right now, and then would that give us the time to review more fully what we think that ordinance or that wording might be?
John and Carrie.
No,
No,
you have
no,
to, you
yeah,
have to make a decision against the current ordinance.
Yeah.
And if the application or
Yeah.
for a permit substantially changes, it needs to be, a new application needs to be submitted
Yes,
and heard.
correct.
Okay.
Okay, that's right.
So do
So what would be the procedure on that?
if the case were not approved, if they were denied, they would come back with a different application for a different type of use.
Okay. Is there another motion?
In a difficult situation like this, focus on the standard, focus on the land use plan, and on the what, because that's what you're given and what you are required, what you're charged to do. It's not a personal decision.
So I guess I'll make the planning board has reviewed the special use permits and adopts the following statements as required by the Rockingham County UDO and NCGS 153A-341 and 153A-342. After considering Rockingham County adopted comprehensive plans in UDO, the planning board disapproves 2020-28. This action is not consistent, and of course, after reading the 4 different findings, I do believe that it meets the use of development is located and proposed to be operated to maintain or promote public health, safety, and general welfare. My biggest issue was under D, that the use or development conforms with the general plans for the land use and development of Rockingham County as embodied in this chapter and in the Rockingham County UDO. My finding was that it's not clear on this, and so that I would rather table this or deny it for now until we can update the text amendment on a new land use plan.
Is there a second? I second.
There's a motion to deny.
To what?
Deny. Yes, disapprove or deny. Yes. There's a motion and a second. All in favor? Raise your right hand. All opposed? The denial is, the motion is denied, or the permit is denied. Bearing in mind what Mr. Stone's comments were, that we feel like that this needs to be handled in a different way.
And shall we take away from this based on testimony from myself and experience and Philip that you would like us to consider some type of land use or regulation that would have allowed something like this?
I think it'd be
That
great.
is correct.
Yep.
Or at least an alternative,
And
a
Carrie,
a reasonable alternative?
If a text amendment is provided and approved by the board or whoever's agreeing to the text amendment, is that something that we could then come back to the Wells and say, okay, here's the
Yeah, I
new
mean,
text amendment and allow?
And can it be specific, can a text amendment be specific to the wells?
No.
Okay, but we
Not as a
can
text to
do
the
a
ordinance.
text amendment for an instance like this.
It would have to be, and it would have to actually cover other, there's only so many niches
It's for the,
you can
it's for
put
the
on it.
general welfare.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I mean, that's where we look at land use plans, be for the general public
That's correct,
welfare.
Okay.
general welfare.
How do we want to handle travel trailers and stuff like that?
And who would we charge with drafting that text amendment?
That would be me,
Okay.
staff, as a representative of staff, and through our consultant in our UDO.
And can we make sure that the wells fully understand what we've done here tonight and what this means for them and what they need to do moving forward?
Yes, I don't, do you understand what the issue has been tonight? Okay.
And that we are trying to we're trying to fix it. And it may take us one more cycle to get it through, but this means that you all will come back when we have the text amendment.
We're going to try really hard to accommodate a situation like this. It's a really good example of a need that is in the county. So this has come to our attention tonight that there is a need.
Are we required to make another application?
Mm-hmm.
If what we're going to do, if whatever a text amendment requires a special use permit, then that would be the case.
There'll be another authority that would have to apply on it.
Correct. A new authority, a new application would require a new application.
And I just do want to address the wells because I hate this, because I know that there is no rental properties out in this area. It's a real big need, a real problem. From a county standpoint, I see it every day, and so I really do feel for you and what's going on. Just my personal basis, I think that this could just be a Pandora's box, and that's what's a little scary. Once that's voted here, I think it could open up a lot of big issues. So I do think that this is going to help the county to address potentially this.
Sure, and in a way that's applies to all and is for general health and welfare.
And maybe we needed the wells to come forward with this type of ask to correct a gap in the UDO, or correct language that really is not helpful to the general welfare of our citizens.
Don't want to leave that as
thank you for that, at least.
As the last word, because I think we're going to, I don't know if we can dig any deeper or not with alternative suggestions, but we'll try.
Well, we can, if you can come up with a text amendment, I think that sounds like the best. I do I would like John's opinion on what we do, just because I value that. That are, we as citizens a lot of times want to fix something that might not have been, we might not be thinking in the 50,000 foot. I just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. So I think we've discussed a lot of options here, and
I mean, we discussed options such as adding bedrooms.
Right.
A guest house, which would mean, a guest house can only be 40% of the main house. So the main house would potentially need to be enlarged anyway to be able to accommodate that smaller home. Manufactured home situation, if there's such a thing as a family complex of manufactured homes. Maybe a guest house that's smaller, maybe a tiny house accommodation that would allow a small family complex of tiny homes. I don't know, I'm just trying to think out of the box.
Carrie, do we have anything in Rockingham County now that says that if it is family, that they could have a separate dwelling? I mean, I know you said, is it like separate residence on one parcel? Is it definitely one parcel per?
It's one per, except for the guest house accommodation of 40% of the main house. That's not for, it doesn't specify a familial relationship. When I said family complex, there are sometimes platting. It's more about how to divide a property into a. We don't have anything like that now.
I guess that's usually one dwelling per plot, right?
That's right.
Well,
And then we have, there's accessory dwellings. In our case, it's 40%. There's attached accessory dwellings. There's those types of things, but it's one accessory to a home, because our zoning and all these zoning is basically one lot, one home, unless it's a RV park, a manufactured home park, a condominium townhome, those type of situations.
Well, I think when you got ordinances like this, and like it was mentioned earlier, sort of cut and dry, that for any unusual presentation that comes up, if you're going to have to create a new ordinance every time, that's going to be pretty lengthy.
Correct. The only reason I suggest it is because, in my experience, if something comes up often and we're saying no to the same thing often, then it is worthy of considering a text amendment. We wouldn't do that for an individual ask. It has to be a trend before it would warrant that type of.
And you
right,
you're seeing a trend, though.
Is that, yeah. Yeah, and
so we do need to
to
address this then.
Yeah, so, and I hope does that address your question, James, about?
Yes.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the last time that's been updated is 16 years, is that correct?
1986, I don't know when the
Wow.
travel trailer was added in 2015. So this part for the travel trailer, but other parts of the ordinance, such as the guest house accommodation, I'm not sure when that was added. But a lot has changed even since 2015. When did tiny houses become popular? I mean,
About that time started.
a lot of changes in the land use landscape that make it challenging for me and for you.
A tiny house is not a travel trailer.
That's correct. They're built, and they're actually built in as a modular or stick-built home. They're built either in a modular in a factory that certifies them as habitable, or stick-built in there, inspected as being habitable. The size, it's just a very small house.
Well, since things have changed, let's see if we can address this. it's not going to help the wells tonight, but see if we can get a better reading on this so that we can, it's not just them, it's the overall addressing a situation that you're finding more frequently now, so. But we've had really good discussion, so thank you very much. Is there, under other business, is there any old business? New business, Carrie?
Paul called me today to say that he's feeling a lot better.
Right.
He was, his body went into septic shock, basically, from an effect that originated in a kidney stone. And it was very close for Paul. He's very miraculously still with us and wants very much to be back on the board. He said to tell you, to say he feels responsible to not be here. bless him, but to thank you for carrying on, especially you, Julie.
Thank you.
For leading the meetings in his absence.
Tough shoes to fill, let me tell
he
you.
said, and he thanked you for your thoughts, because I know I had told him that I had brought him up before and that you were thinking of him. And James, it'll be nice to pass on to him that you included him in your prayers tonight, in our prayers.
Yeah.
The next meeting, November 9th, I want to make sure I'm looking at my calendar while I say this. Yeah, the November 9th meeting will have our land use plan UDO consultant come to present to you. So you can ask him we can ask him all kinds of questions. We want to keep him here all night. But
Carrie, for that night, can we keep the caseload light, even if we need to do
we're
two?
trying really hard. I think we got down to one case.
Okay.
We really we had to scramble a bit to try to.
But it's not like this one, right?
Yeah.
That one is for an events facility, a special events facility, like a wedding facility.
Okay.
So, and I think it is more straightforward. It is certainly more straightforward. So,
Yeah.
you'll be presented on November 9th, and then December 14th, we're going to ask you to actually recommend the land use plan for approval. At your comfort, you've got to be comfortable with it. And the Board of Commissioners wants to know that you are recommending or not. And then at your January 11th meeting, we are reviewing the UDO. And I think that we have in February adopting or recommending for adoption the UDO, February 8th.
Carrie, can I make a recommendation that we get the land use plan,
Yeah.
way in advance?
I'm actually about to send it. I'm kind of getting another look at it, but this is actually it.
Yeah.
So
If
I'm going to
it's
send it ahead of
homework,
time.
it's gonna
And I
take a
think,
while.
The UDO may even be ready to send for you to start looking at. I've asked the consultant to. The land use plan, I haven't asked for a summary, but for the UDO, I've asked for a summary of changes.
Okay.
And especially substantial changes, substantive changes from your current UDO, things that would make land use behave differently.
Okay.
So it's a big document, but both of them, you need both of them ahead of time, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
How do we address the text conversation, text amendment
From
conversation?
tonight?
Mhm.
Yeah, we have me gather up my research and talk to the development ordinance consultant. Will be the first, because you've directed me to go ahead and look into it.
How long of a process is that normally?
Well, I would not want to do a text amendment that wasn't included in this UDO, the overall UDO update process. And I don't expect that it could be anyway, when you think about the timing. This is almost November. And the time it would take to write a separate amendment, to advertise it, to to research it. So I expected it would be part of the final UDO, and that schedule that I gave you, was that,
Okay.
so February.
Okay. All right, are there any other questions, comments?
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to adjourn? Second? All in favor? Any opposed? Of course not. Meeting adjourned.